We'll turn now outside our borders to a major development in Russia's war on Ukraine. The European Union unanimously agreeing to a €50 billion 4-year aid package for Ukraine. The high-stakes deal comes after weeks of negotiations with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who vetoed the aid package back in December, and comes while another crucial aid package is stuck in the U.S. Senate.
I'm grateful for your decision on the financial instrument for us. For our people, for Ukraine. Ukraine facility with 50 billion euros for a 4-year period. This is a clear signal that Ukraine will withstand and that Europe will withstand.
In an exclusive interview, I spoke with Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba just as the deal with the EU was being announced. Have a listen.
Well, EUS and EU packages ideally must walk hand in hand. And the fact that it's the European Union who is setting the threshold and demonstrating leadership is a new development. Usually it's the United States who are making the first steps and then Europe follows. But what we've seen in recent months, because of the ongoing discussions in the US politics, is that the European Union is capable of taking the lead and sending a message across the Atlantic about the need to continue, the need to stand firm in defense of the world order based on the rules and principles and values which the United States, Canada, and European nations defend by all means available to them. So hopefully this morning people in Washington will wake up, read the news from Europe, and the decision by the EU will have a positive impact on the dynamics of discussions in the US Congress.
What do you think the likelihood of that is, based not just on your observations, but your conversations with US officials, both in the White House and outside of the White House? What do you think the likelihood of the US following the EU's lead is, and especially against the backdrop of the complex domestic political situation there?
Well, I'm not a master of tarot cards. I do not make guesses. I work every day hard to make things happen. And people were casting doubt about the decision, the prospects of the EU decision that we made, that was made today. People are casting doubts about the decision that the Congress is expected to make. But we just keep working on making it happen. So I will not assess the likelihood. But I will say that both Republican and Democratic parties, they stand in favor of supporting Ukraine. And the whole discussion, as you rightly mentioned, in the United States is not whether to support Ukraine. It's about the domestic border issue that keeps other issues locked in a package with the border. So we hear cautious optimism coming from Washington. But again, we do not assess the likelihood. We just work to make things happen. And I'm sure that eventually we will succeed on all fronts.
It's true, Minister, that a big part of this is the hang-ups around border security. But there is a constituency of politicians in the United States who have become a bit louder over recent months in their opposition to the level of funding, the level of aid that the U.S. has provided so far. They are buoyed in many cases by the former president, Donald Trump, who could become the next president if he is ultimately the Republican nominee and then ultimately successful in the election. How much does that prospect worry you?
People of America will make their choice, and we will work with that choice. It's very simple for us. We never meddled in any elections. We respect the sovereign choices people make, and I want you to understand, we just look at these things from a different perspective. We don't have the luxury of being worried. We just can't afford that. We're fighting a war.
Minister, I want to ask about the relationship between Ukraine and Canada. We've spoken before. I know you described in that instance Canada as a real steadfast partner in Russia's war on Ukraine. The political context has changed a little bit in this country, not to the degree that it has in the United States, but particularly in the last part of last year. there was a debate about updating the free trade agreement between our two countries. The opposition Conservatives ended up voting against that free trade agreement, and they said that was because of language around a price on carbon, essentially a climate policy. They were accused by the government here of importing the far-right politics that are against Ukraine in the United States. They disputed that characterization. The Prime Minister, in another interview, the Prime Minister of Canada, said that President Zelensky had expressed concern to him about those developments. Do you share that concern?
Right, so you have your own domestic politics, you have your own domestic fights. This is your business, but I want to tell something to the voters of Canada who vote either for one party or another party. The best thing you can do is to support Ukraine. Our biggest asset in every country are not political parties, are the people of these countries who sympathize us as a nation who is fighting against a much stronger enemy. So as long as people of Canada will continue supporting us, will continue supporting Ukraine, will continue to understand what is at stake in this struggle, not only for Ukraine, but also for their own security and prosperity, politicians will be making the right choices.
Do I interpret that, Minister, that you aren't worried about any kind of growing opposition here? I know my guess is you don't want to wade too closely into domestic politics, but the Prime Minister here is saying that your president is concerned.
Listen, with all due respect, my daughter has a flu, and I'm worried of that. But I'm not worried about anything else for the reason I described to you earlier before. This is just not how we handle the war and everything related to supporting Ukraine. If we see a problem, we work to overcome it. But we don't have the luxury to be worried. We are not in the peacetime politics when politicians can pick an issue and play with it. We're not playing with it because this situation here in Ukraine is about human lives. It's about the future of a sovereign nation. It's about the future of global order. And it's about the future of countries like Canada, the United States, and European nations to benefit from the way this world is arranged. So all of these things have to be taken into account, but there is no space for being worried.